So classification of hormones. Hormones can be classified according to the chemical nature, molecular structure, and also site of action and solubility of solubility properties. Chemical nature. About the chemical nature. The chemical nature, it means what type of hormones we have, whether they are protein, whether they are peptide, whether they are steroid, whether they are some other molecules. So it depends on the structure. What's the structure of the hormone. As I mentioned, peptide or protein or amines or steroid. So about the peptide, so the first type is according to chemical nature, we have peptides and proteins. Peptides and protein hormones are products of translations. So they are products of translation. It enter the peptide and proteins. We know that there's a process which is called the transcription from the DNA to messenger RNA, and messenger RNA translate to the protein in the translation process. So those hormones, peptide and proteins, they synthesize in this way. So from DNA to messenger RNA transcription, and from the messenger RNA to the protein or peptide by the translation process. So we have a lipid, they are protein and peptides, they are lipid insoluble. And also they are large, complex structure, can differ from species due to amino acid substitution. So most peptide hormones circulate unbound to other proteins, and they don't need to bound to other protein or molecule, because they can freely circulate in the blood because they are lipid insoluble or water soluble. In general, the half-life of circulating peptide hormone is only a few minutes, like insulin, which is an example of peptide hormone. It can stay for no more than 10 minutes in the circulation. So an example for peptide and protein hormones, we have the anterior pituitary secretes luteinizing hormone and follicle stimulating hormone. Those act on the gonads. So what is the anterior? We have in the brain, which a part in the brain which is called pituitary glands, and we have anterior and posterior. So the anterior pituitary glands or part, it's responsible for secreting some type of hormone, and posterior secreting other type of hormone. And where they get signals, anterior and posterior pituitary gland, where they get signals from, they get signals from the hypothalamus. So we have luteinizing hormone and follicle stimulating hormone. So luteinizing hormone is hormone produced by gonadotropic cells in the anterior pituitary gland. It acts on the gonads. And gonads mean the testes in the male and ovaries in the female. So they are responsible for production of steroid hormones such as testosterone, estrogen, and progesterone. So they secreted luteinizing hormone secreted by anterior pituitary gland, and via blood it goes to the gonads, like testes and ovaries in the female and testes in the male, and they then the gonads produce the other types of the hormone, like progesterone, estrogens, steroid hormone. So testosterone, estrogen, and progesterone. So we have a factor which is called luteinizing hormone releasing factor, which is a hypothalamic peptide, is involved in the regulation of productive function by controlling synthesis and release of luteinizing hormone. So as I mentioned before, the pituitary or anterior pituitary glands receive signal from the hypothalamus, and this signal is called LHRH, or luteinizing hormone releasing this factor, which is a hypothalamic peptide. So involved in the regulation of the and secretion of the luteinizing hormone in the anterior pituitary glands. So, and also it acts on the follicle stimulating hormones. They both act on the gonad synergistically. So they act together on gonad for releasing the steroid hormones. And also they are both from the anterior pituitary gland, as I mentioned. So LH is made by the pituitary gland, a small gland located underneath the brain. So as I mentioned, also LH plays an important role in the sexual development and functioning. So in women, what is the role of LH in the woman? In the woman, helps control the menstrual cycle, and it's also trigger the release of an egg from ovary. So what's the function in the male? LH function in the male is stimulate testosterone release by Leydig cells of the testes. So it acts on the gonads for like ovary for production of for production of the egg, and it acts on the testes for production. So it stimulates testosterone release by the testes. So it stimulates testosterone in the male. LH stimulates testosterone release by cells of the testes. And also in men, LH causes the testicle to make testosterone, which is important for production of sperm. So we have also a follicle stimulating hormone, which is help control the menstrual cycle in women and stimulate the growth of egg in the ovaries. So they both act synergistically, FSH and LH. So FSH level in women change throughout the menstrual cycle, with the highest level of FSH happening just before the egg is released by the ovary. So in we say it's known as, this period is known as ovulation period, which is making an it's egg released by the ovary. So in men, FSH or follicle stimulating hormone helps control the production of sperm like luteinizing hormone. So they both act on the gonads for production of egg and production of sperm in male and egg in the ovary of the female. So we have another part which is called posterior pituitary gland, which is secrete antidiuretic hormone, and also called vasopressin, and also it is secreting oxytocin. Antidiuretic hormone, it is a hormone that's help in the retention of water from the kidney. So once antidiuretic hormone released by the posterior pituitary glands, what happened? It acts on the kidney in order to retain the water from the kidney, which is stored in the kidney, in the vesicles, and it retains this water, not letting them to lose it via urination. So especially during thirst and during, for example, when there's a high osmolarity, body osmolarity, once there is high sodium content in our body, so hyperosmolarity, it leads to this hormone will activate and secrete antidiuretic hormone. So posterior pituitary gland will secrete antidiuretic hormone. It acts on the kidney in order to retain the water and prevent lose it via urination. And also it's called as vasopressin. So vasopressin and antidiuretic hormone, they are same. And oxytocin, what's oxytocin? It's a peptide hormone and neuropeptide. It's normally produced by the hypothalamus and released by posterior pituitary glands. It plays a role in social bonding, reproduction, and during the childbirth and period after the childbirth. So oxytocin is released into the bloodstream as a hormone in response to love and in the labor. So it's responsible for labor and lactation, producing the fat in the milk, mother's milk, of course, for doing the lactation for her baby.